It's on. All right. So we have our Newton Planning Board meeting for August 13th, 2024. It is 7 o'clock on the dot. First, we will salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Find my chair here. Okay, so we've seated Mr. Gibbons in place of Mr. Moran. We don't have to do anything for that, do we, Jen?
No.
Okay. We have two public hearings. So to get started here, first up, we have the application of RSA 23175 to the project at 24 New Boston Road, Newton, New Hampshire. So the property is referenced as on tax map 3, block 1, lot 12. Do we have somebody coming to the podium for this?
Everybody has a copy of Mr. Guinan's complaint. And I gave you a complete copy of the RSA.
Okay, so the email here.
Do you want to have Mr. Quintel step up and talk about the culvert real quick?
Oh.
So we're about to get the plan here, and this is the plan that we put through the planning board. It was reviewed by town engineer with input from him and input from the road agent who's here now. And so the existing conditions are that section of New Boston Road, the water runs right down the edge of pavement because there's no ditch line. And it goes from basically where the cemetery is right down past the entrance to our project at 24 New Boston Road and continues straight down past the butter's driveway and then into wetlands. So it basically runs over the edge of the pavement. In the development of the project at 24 New Boston Road, we had to comply with the town rules and regulations. And the town rules and regulations say from the edge of pavement, we have to have a negative 1% pitch into the project for 100 feet, which means all the drainage from the street coming down New Boston Road would all go into the project, into basically a hole and no place to go. So we came up with a design plan to have catch basins put in to capture the water from the edge of pavement, put it underneath the roadway, and then down the edge of pavement, and ultimately come out to the wetlands. And so what this will do to us to have is the drainage from the street, the drainage that goes into the project be captured and go underground instead of running on the surface, and minimizing any freezing or icing that would develop on the edge of pavement, not only for our driveway, but an abutting driveway as well. So it would be an improvement. And this is what we discussed when we talked to the town engineer, Mike Vignali, about how to design this, and also with input from the road agent as far as how he would like to see it in the future for the town to have easy access to maintain these structures and be able to basically cure a drainage issue there. So that's about it. Got a copy of the plan, but you've seen the plans before. We certainly can answer any questions that you have, if that's the case. And that's about all I have to say at this
So
time.
with the new culvert put in place, it would eliminate that runoff going down into the wetlands, correct?
Correct. It'll get it underground instead of running over the surface, which
Right.
freezes and ice builds up and so on and so on. So that's about all I have to say, unless you have any other questions.
I just have one question, if that's okay. Dennis, is it correct to say that all of the proposed work will either be done on the applicable site or in the town right-of-way?
That's correct. It'll be, this drainage will be, the drainage structures will be on the development's property at 24 New Boston Road. Any culverts that get placed beyond that will be right on the edge of pavement, which will be right in within the right-of-way, and no disturbance to any abutting properties.
Thank you.
Mr. Pavero, would you like to give a quick synopsis of your,
Good evening, Mike Pavero, road agent. My biggest concern on that whole project that Denny just talked about is the culvert under the Boston Road. It wasn't shown on the drawings that were submitted to you guys. I asked for it to be on the drawings. For some reason, it did not make it on there. I have since then talked to the developer, and he is going to upgrade that culvert for us, which helps the town because we're not going to spend any money to upgrade it. And it really should have been because there's additional drainage that's going to be added to that. Plus that culvert has been a problem for the past few years. We factored out twice this winter. It's undersized, it's old. And next year, if I can get the funding, we're going to rebuild New Boston Road from 108 to the Newtontown line, and Kingston's going to do it from there all the way out to 125. So next year, all of New Boston Road is scheduled to be redone. So I want to get that culvert done this year. Other than that, pretty straightforward for me. And what Denny said is correct. It doesn't matter when you build infrastructures, roads, you want your surface water underground as fast as you can get it there. You don't want it on the surface because it can become an icing issue or just in general a problem for maintenance and erosion.
and as he said, it's on town access. What limited part?
It should be, any of the culvert work. I mean, the culvert work that we're talking about on 120, on New Boston Road is in town, it is in the town roadway. The additional drainage, best of my knowledge, that is in the town right of way, and it is on what is town land, for the lack of a better explanation. Any other questions?
Thanks, Mike.
No? Okay. You're welcome.
Jen, anything?
Just that I have not actually seen the abutters original letter that you all have in front of you, but I understand the situation and the response from your town administrator. I actually don't believe that the RSA is applicable in this case, given that no work is being proposed on the abutters property.
Right, so
So I don't think there's any action for the board to take.
that's what I was trying to understand here. I mean, looking at 23175, I mean, as you just stated, it says as long as any work that occurs is done within the proper right-of-way or within, you know, not on the abutter's property, that it doesn't require action. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Can I speak?
Please.
Yeah, I'm John Guinan, and I'm one of the abutters to the development, and I guess I'm the one that made the complaint. Actually, I was just asking a question. According to the RSA, and I guess that's what this public hearing is to address, is does the RSA apply? And I think it does. Selectmen are designated at least 30 days prior to the commencement of change. This is a change in the drainage along New Boston Road. to give notice certified mail to adjoining landowners and others whose land might be visibly affected. I'm not the only person whose land is going to be affected. I did a little looking around at DES, got on their GIS mapping system, and a good portion of the land on 24 New Boston Road, 26 New Boston Road, 28, all of Kiesel Lane. The other side of the road is all in a wellhead protection area. So there's other parties that have some concerns. I spoke to Epping Pump and Well, who maintain the community water supply for Rowell Estates in Kingston. That's the wellhead protection area. So my concern is that there would need to be a public hearing in accordance with the law so that these people can voice their concerns. Other property owners include New Hampshire Fish and Game, and of course the residents further along where the wetland abuts their property on the east side of New Boston Road after the increased flow into the wetlands goes onto their property. And that was the first concern that I had, of course, was with the environment. The other concern I have is you want to dig up my driveway, and that's the only access I have to my property. My wife is 77 and I'm 78 next month. We cannot have our access interrupted. If there's a medical emergency for one of us, emergency teams would have to get in and take care of us. We have deliveries from stuff we purchase and so forth online. We need to get in and out for doctor's appointments and other appointments and everything else. So I see no provisions in the plan. And I kind of suggest that the plan was drawn in a manner to obscure the outflow of this new drainage system on New Boston Road. The outflow on the plan is located directly behind the title block. There are no elevations demonstrated on this. The presence of the driveway at 22 New Boston Road is shown, but the location of my driveway is not shown. And that approval of this plan was not informed.
Page 5, go to page 5.
Well, page 5 is the drawing profile, and that differs from the plan that was approved by New Hampshire DES. Has no page 5. Okay, over here. I took part of page 5. Please bear with me.
Take your time. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Bowden.
And I marked it up to show the location of my driveway and location of the wet areas adjacent to the, on both sides of New Boston Road. And there is also a year-round spring located on the property on the other side of mine from 24, which is not numbered 28. It's part of the lot on Kiesel Lane. And I've delineated a wellhead protection area. As you see, it begins at a junction, well, actually it extends from across the street. It's a large circular radius. From here, across the entire drainage system, behind my house, and then it completely encircles Kiesel Lane and further on down the road to encircle Derby Lane and Kingston and the Rowell Estates next to the railroad tracks. It's a pretty large area. I also spoke to New Hampshire DES. This also shows the wellhead protection area, including Keysel Lane, the developed property, my property, the adjacent property, town fire pond property, and I guess this property here is New Hampshire Fish and Game. Some of the wetlands in back here is New Hampshire Fish and Game. Well, actually, it's this property here and property across the street of New Hampshire Fish and Game. So, I mean, all of these have to be involved in this permitting process. Getting back to speaking up my driveway, there are statutes that protect me, protect my access to my property. If I had a memory, I wouldn't have to write this stuff down. Obstructing access to property during work, RSA 231:70. Obstructing access to property during work is prohibited unless access is provided over and across any obstructions. And then there's RSA 231:102. Obstructing access with equipment, materials, etc. I don't know if I brought copies of that with me or not, but obstructing access to highways. 31:102, excuse me. No person shall obstruct a highway by parking all of other vehicles or objects in or in front of driveway to any dwelling. And 231:70, obstructing during repairs and repairing highways. No uncovered trench or ditch shall be made by the side of the travel part thereof, next and opposite to a dwelling house, yard, private way, etc., unless a way is provided over and across such obstructions. So there is nothing in the plan description that describes how this is going to be accomplished. It has to be safe, of course, according to the law. So those are my concerns.
Okay, so, I mean, it was kind of a lot to go through there, but I think correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like there's really kind of two major items here. It's or at least in, in terms of what the planning board
which is permitting.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
DES and state and federal permits required for managing stormwater runoff during and after construction. And maybe, I spoke to DES this morning, and they said there are some wetlands permits that are required. I mean, we didn't get into a lot of detail. I mean, I was just looking for information. And she said there's also EPA permits that are more than likely required.
So in terms of kind of what we initially started talking about here of kind of the notification that you were expecting to receive. So if you look at 231:75 here, under what you were talking about on receiving a notification 30 days prior to commencement of the work in a manner set forth in RSA 231:9 to adjoining landowners and other owners whose land might be reasonably anticipated to be affected, which you quoted as well. So section A underneath that is no such notice shall be required in cases where none of the work is proposed to be done outside the limits of the highway right-of-way, and such work consists solely of maintenance, grading, or the cleaning or repairing of existing ditches, or the repairing or replacing of existing culverts or drainage structures without altering their size, depth, or positioning.
None of those conditions are met. Work continues onto the subdivided property. There's a total of approximately 530 feet of 18-inch diameter storm drainage pipe connecting to catch basins on the property, and then along the right-of-way in Boston Road, there's 190 feet, I believe, of 18-inch storm drain. So it's not limited to the right-of-way, and it is not repair or replacement of an existing size drain, so notification is required.
Mr. Eddy?
Yes.
I think I might be able to help. So when an application comes before the planning board, one of the key provisions is that all abutters are notified. One of the reasons is so that many of the issues that Mr. O'Malley has addressed can be brought up during the public hearing of the development of a project. Drainage, culverts, wetlands. Planning board also has its own rules, along with state and federal rules that apply in such situations. As far as the RSA concerning access and ditches and notification, work is proposed to be done on the site that had the subdivision in addition to the right-of-way, but the notification for right-of-way work does not require a public hearing or that 30-day notification. So, and unless I'm mistaken, Jim, am I correct that no appeal was made to this planning board decision within 30 days?
Is that a question for Jim?
Yeah, sorry.
Jim, did you hear that? I'm sorry. Oh, she was saying no appeal, or she was asking if any appeal has been made within 30 days. No appeals were made. So no.
So, and that is the secondary process for if someone is concerned that the planning board did not follow its own rules, or there has been things that needed to be determined during the approval process, that is the first way that you can legally seek remedy to a decision. However, nothing was filed during that 30-day period. I would recommend, though perhaps Mike Pavera can speak to this, that before work is done, a notification, although be it not required, could be given to the abutters that work may be beginning at a certain time, and any small interruption would be at least be able to be notified.
Did she just refer to me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you repeat that again, please?
Yes, I
That
mean, you're
prior
coming
to you
through
starting
awfully
any of the
garbled.
work
I mean,
in the
it's very
vicinity of the
difficult to hear.
abutter's driveway, that a notification could be given to him so that he will know when to expect work near his property, although it is all taking place on town-owned right-of-way.
She's asking, even though it's not necessarily required, like essentially a courtesy notification, if
Yes.
for any reason access could be disrupted, for him to enter and leave.
Doing the
site.
culvert and whatnot. Wouldn't it be the contractor?
So we've got two issues going. It's a combined project. Again, when I came up here a little ago, the only thing I'm concerned about is the culvert going across New Boston Road. We've never had to give a notification. We give the courtesy notification to the traveling and the abutters that there'll be a road closure. We've always done those. But a culvert crossing, we've never given notification to anybody about a culvert crossing. We can do that with no notifications. It's a drainage improvement. We can increase it by one size of the existing culvert with no permits and no notification to anybody. I don't think that's what this gentleman's looking for. I could be wrong.
No, I'm looking for all this new work. There are other property owners that could visually be impacted by what's proposed here. You're increasing the water flow into a wetlands area. And I'm sure I've read someplace in either our subdivision regulations, zoning regulations, or the wetlands regulations that you can't increase stormwater runoff into a wetlands area, but I can't put my finger on it today.
So that basic
what
premise is
I am
correct. You
concerned
cannot
with-
increase
what I am
drainage over
concerned
what
with-
has previously already been occurring. That was why this property required a drainage analysis that Mr. Quintel can speak to in more detail. That was compliant with the town regulations, in addition to having the town engineer review them, so that the town had its own eyes on ensuring that the project was not increasing drainage off of the site.
I couldn't understand a word you said.
Could you
It's
repeat
so
that?
garbled.
Repeat that, Jen?
Sure. So when the application was put forth, it had to accommodate the town regulations that simply say you may not have more drainage off of a site than was already existing when you propose a development. The town engineer also reviewed the drainage analysis prepared to ensure it met the town regulations.
So there's not gonna be any, the long and short of it is, according to the town engineer and what they've gone forth, there's not gonna be any excess runoff.
Well, none of that
For the
information was
drainage.
brought forth in the previous public hearing. I brought up the issue of the new plumbing being put in and having to dig up my driveway, and I received in response blank stares.
So Dennis, is this driveway gonna be dug up?
Only in the right of way.
Right.
Yeah, the part that I have to
I mean,
maintain.
standard
part I have to
construction
maintain on
practices,
my
when
own.
you cross a driveway like that, the contractor's gonna either have to give them a temporary driveway or put steel plates across or something that they have access, like he was just saying, if
If
an
you
ambulance
cannot
shows
deny
up.
me access,
I mean,
until I see something suitable, nobody's gonna dig up that driveway.
it's what happens all the time in construction.
It's
You go
not your
across driveways
driveway,
all the
it's the
time.
right of way from the
Excuse
town.
me,
I just said, it's not your driveway, it's the access.
my
The
access.
town right of way, which connects to your driveway, and you would be able to get from yours to the road is what we're trying to make sure would
Right.
happen.
Right, and that access has been maintained by me for 44 years. In 1982, I wrote a letter to the Board of Selectmen requesting a solution for the stormwater runoff on New Boston Road, and they told me that that was my responsibility. So I have spent money and time and labor maintaining that access in a reasonable condition, because if I didn't do it, it would be 6 feet deep right now.
We're talking
I
about
also-
something different now, though, but
Yeah.
first
No,
we're
I'm not losing
addressing
my
access.
temper.
You
I'm-
won't be denied
I
access.
just stated
Driveway.
that the law says you can't deny me access to my property.
You will not be
Property
denied
structure,
access to your driveway.
It says over or across. It doesn't say around. You know,
No.
if you want to get to the
Standard,
letter of the
standard
law.
practice, it's in the same spot. You just drive over steel plates. Typically, that's what you do. It's, I mean, they cut across driveways all the time, and they make sure everybody.
Can we get back to the original purpose of the public hearing, which is to determining applicability of RSA 23175? Says the selectmen will issue a written notice.
I mean,
30 days prior to
30
work.
days prior to the commencement of work, and not later than 15 days prior to the commencement of work, to all parties whose land may reasonably be affected by.
And yours will be the only one affected.
Well, according to New Hampshire DES, there is a good probability that land.
There's a probability,
Land within the wellhead protected area will be affected. Epping Pump and Well is extremely concerned about what's going on. New Hampshire DES is concerned about what's going on. So what's wrong with bringing it out into the open? I mean, why does this have to be?
it's been brought out into the open, sir, that's why we're,
This is
that's
the
why
first-
we're here, and
this is
that's
the
why
first
we've had the
discussion-
public
This is
hearing.
the first discussion in a public hearing of the subject that was brought up during the first public hearing, and the response was a blank stare. The drawings doesn't show elevations, it doesn't show the outflow. I don't know, you're gonna do what you want. Law doesn't matter, go home.
Could I do a brief follow-up? Brief follow-up?
please, yeah.
So we would do everything we can to accommodate him in and out of his property across the town right-of-way. It's no different than the work that was done a year or so ago on Thornell Road, where we put the culvert all the way down, crossed driveways there, and did not interrupt anybody's access from their property onto the highway. So when the time comes, certainly we can notify him to let him know that, you know, the work is to be done at a specific time, and we'll make all the provisions that we can to provide him access in one direction while the work is being done on part of the driveway. And then when that gets in and backfilled, when the work starts in this way, he would still be able to get access one way or another. We'll do all we can to make sure that he has access one way or another. And obviously,
I think in fairness, though, he was the one that needed to hear that, because, I mean, he listed a lot of concerns there, but maybe I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but the main concern was that he was gonna get access cut off to his driveway if emergency vehicles
yeah,
were
but
required.
that's really not what happens, because we do this all the time when we put in
I understand
work in the right of way. A lot of times notice is given to these people, and someone like this, and if he needs to have his car outside onto the abutting property, just parked there, if in case he needs it, he could also do that. So there are a number of different ways of being able to accommodate somebody like this.
The other major problem that he was addressing was he kept referring to the wetlands and there being excess runoff
Yeah, increased
water to
runoff.
that, and we've already addressed that fact.
Talked about that in our drainage analysis, and Mike Vignali reviewed that. And we have also submitted our plans to the state for subdivision approval, and we've gotten subdivision approval. We're sending our application to the alteration of terrain, which also reviews the runoff and the impacts to any watersheds or any protective zones as well. So we are complying with whatever the state rules are and whatever the town rules have given us the approval for, and we do our best to accommodate the gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Quintel.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so to put a bow on this, if you will.
That's it.
Okay. We good to move on?
Yep.
So, our second hearing for tonight.
Mr. Chair, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Do we not need to maybe say something about that no further
I mean,
discussion or anything is, you know, just so we can sort of close this discussion out?
Jen, should we do a motion to simply say that it is not applicable to RSA 23175?
I would just honestly do something more simple, that there is no action for the planning board to take on this matter.
No. Okay. Sounds good. Then there's no action for the planning board to take on this matter.
Okay, it sounds good to me.
All right, on to our second hearing for tonight. So up next, we have Fresh Acres, LLC of Chelmsford. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Request a hearing for a two-lot subdivision for their property at 34 Smith Corner Road, Newton, New Hampshire. The property is referenced as tax map 8, block 3, lot 9.
Mr. Chairman, I'll recuse myself because I'm a butter.
Okay. All right, please take the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving us the time and opportunity today to talk about this. My name is Matt. My partner, Sifraz, we both here today. And as you probably already know, we own the property on 34 Smith Corner Road since June of 2023. And named through Fresh Acres LLC. And the reason we are here today is because we wanted to see if what are the chances to subdivide the aforementioned property. However, the location of the existing development makes it hard because of the existing house was built next to the center of the property when it was built long ago. We would like to request a variance for that, as we want to leave sufficient space between the house and the new lots. So that's basically what we're here today for.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any question you might have.
Can I ask you a question? Were you planning on sharing the existing driveway that's there so that it would feed both properties?
I mean, we were thinking to see what the best way of doing that. We are open for, whatever make best of use of property. Whether use that driveway or build a new one from the other side next to the new lot. However, whatever way we doing it, we still leave in a lot of space, we still leave in a lot of lots, we still leave in a lot of lands.
Right.
But we figure when we first bought that farm, it was a farm, as you all know. It had horses there, and the previous owner moved, and she put it in sale, and it was vacant for some good time, and it needed a lot of work, a lot of landscaping. The house needed sufficient work, and we tried to do some work to the property where it makes it look reasonable. And that's what we did. So since we cannot use it as a farm anymore, and like we said, we're trying to see what the best use of it, and we figure maybe another lot will be good to do.
Well, you certainly have enough property to do so.
So,
The only problem is that you would need a variance because you'll be insufficient by 25 yards for the frontage on the new one. That's kind of why I was asking about sharing that driveway where it comes in the middle between the two properties like that. But Jen?
yeah, the biggest issue is really just it's got substandard frontage, so they will require a variance.
Yeah.
But given the configuration of the lot, that seems a fairly reasonable orientation for having if it were to be subdivided, so it may be a reasonable variance to grant, but that is up to the zoning board. As far as shared driveway, it certainly can be done. Given the proximity to some of the other roads, kind of minimizing the curb cuts would generally be preferable from a safety standpoint. Doesn't mean that it has to be a shared driveway, but that's the general premise is the less curb cuts you have, the better. But it would require for a subdivision having a easement so that both parties would have access to be able to use a shared driveway and a maintenance plan.
Right.
So that's sort of the complicating factor of that.
Yeah, I was just thinking the safety factor myself. That's why I had asked about it.
But it does seem that the application is complete, but any approval would have to include variance, and if they do want to consider a shared driveway, that it would also require executing easements to enable the access and maintenance of that shared driveway.
Mr. Chair, this is Barbara.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, I have a question. I see on the new lot that they wanted to create where the proposed house and the proposed 4K area is, which is the septic. But I don't see where the septic is for the existing dwelling. I didn't see that on here. Were they expecting to share this, the septic between the two?
Good question.
So if you guys don't mind me talking about two things she mentioned. Number one, according to the map, if you're looking at the map in front of you, the engineer office actually, they made a separate driveway from the other side for the new lot at the end of the property.
Yeah.
And with that being said, for the septic part, it will be a separate one. It will not be used with the old one, so it will be totally separate. But we do have on the map the line of the driveway at the end of the road, given the frontage we have from end to end.
Right.
Right. But what I was looking at on your plan here is that it doesn't show where your existing septic is for your existing house.
Well, that's actually behind the house from the left side, next to Portland Farm Road. So if you coming from 108 going straight, before you get to if you're Portland Farms Road in your left at the beginning of the property, that's where the septics are. Because I did look at it when I first bought the property, and actually we called to call the septics people to come and make sure it's, we wanted to know if the situation is good, and that's where the septic is. So it's way far from what we planning to do.
I mean, based on what you just described, that's where the existing well is. Am I looking at this wrong?
I think it was here.
Yeah, and the well's on that corner that you're talking about.
Correct. There's the corner where the well is, and the septics maybe, I would say 30 yards maybe going in to the left.
To the left of the well, as you're
Correct.
looking at it.
Correct.
By the wetland?
So it sounds like it's in between the existing well and the wetland, but you'll note they also have a test pit on both lots, and one of the reasons for that test pit is to ensure that if they were to have their existing septic system fail, they have a place where they can actually put in a new septic system. That is the reason the test pit is required and why they had to do that to do a subdivision, even though the existing house has a septic system.
Got it.
So that's what
Okay,
test pit
thank you.
number 5 is? The way they show it? I'm assuming.
Yes. And I will say, my comment about the driveway, while I understand that the driveway is being proposed sort of on the south side of these properties, the top of if they did want to do a shared driveway, that was my only comment, is if they wanted to do that, then they would need to have easements.
Okay. Any other questions? Any members of the board? If there's no other question. Please. Yeah.
Take over.
I noticed that, yes.
An error made. I'm Jim Dolan. I live at 41 Smith Corner. Been a resident of Newton for 31 years.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but you guys haven't taken jurisdiction of this yet?
No, we
And
haven't.
if you wanted to have public comment, you should get to that point first.
Okay, let's do jurisdiction
I'll
real
make a
quick, and
motion
then
to
we can
take
go right to your
jurisdiction.
questions.
Second.
Okay. On the plans, the first sentence on the plans, on the notes.
Hold on
Wait,
one
we
second,
have to-
guys.
we have to-
Hold on.
Sorry.
It's
It's
not
okay. One
shout
more.
out either, please.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristus,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbons. Oh, that's right, I apologize. Mr. Eddy,
Aye.
that's unanimous.
I see what he means.
Yeah, it says 3 in the upper right.
On both pages, note number 1.
All right, the podium's yours.
I just make a note that the subdivision, the first note on the notes says it's a 3-lot subdivision, not 2.
Correct, yep.
Yeah, the house was purchased, as he said, 14 months ago. In the drawing, there is an existing gravel driveway that's on the left-hand side of the dwelling. That was never there until a week after they purchased the unit and the land, and it was a farm. It was sold as a farm. This is a LLC, and there's no animals over there. There was animals there for a couple of days, and then they all disappeared back in June, but I just wanted to understand, now there's 3 driveways there, where there was really just one. And I know you brought the point up, Mr. Machard, about the shared driveway. I'm just trying to understand, from a traffic study, with 3 driveways there and Willamine as another road. It's just kind of some blind spots. If you've ever been on Smith Corner Road, that dips down right there, right in front of my house. There's a big drop right there, seeing cars come up, especially where that proposed 3rd driveway is. So, and how big is the house that's being proposed? It's not on these drawings. I'm just wondering what the size of the house is.
So I just want, the house that's shown on the plan is not necessarily beholden to where they would have to place the house.
Yeah.
They do have to adhere to setbacks, wetland setbacks, but the actual proposed house footprint may not be exactly as is shown on the plan. And that is perfectly typical of this type of a subdivision. They are requesting to create a lot.
And the reason, I guess this hearing is they're looking for a variance. And in order for that, I haven't heard a hardship case why they need a variance, or the reasons why, so. They just would like to have, they would like to have.
This is a planning board hearing for a subdivision. They would require a variance to create these lots because the lot is non-conforming as far as its frontage.
That's
That
correct.
would be with the zoning board, and that's where hardship would specifically have to be addressed for that criteria. There are other criteria as well.
Yeah, that's not us, so they
Okay.
would have to go before zoning.
All right. That's pretty much all I have. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to say something about it?
Yeah, I'm a butter. 24th at Smith Corner Road, Tom Lackborg. Resident in town for 24 years. I agree with Jim had to say. The line of sight's terrible in that whole area right there. That those intersections are offset, Willamine to Boot Lane, that's a bad situation all the time. Now you're gonna add a bunch of driveways on the side where you're blind hill coming up towards Jim's house as you take off, going towards Blastow. That needs a traffic study, in my opinion. We got a lot of traffic on Smith Corner Road, and it ain't slowing any down. And we got a lot of heavy trucks, a lot of tractor trailers, and we got a ton of triaxles. So I like to get something looked at that before anything gets approved. Because it's, beyond ridiculous. And we're pothole city with a cut through for everybody to go to Plastow. Now you're gonna add all this. Traffic study would be my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a recommendation that specifically could be tied to a zoning board variance that may be recommended is to ensure that the lines of sight for a proposed driveway actually be met, which would correspond with the reduced frontage requirement. The planning board could also request some review that the line of sight will be adequate, but a full-blown traffic study would not be a typical recommendation for what would be 2 residential lots.
Mike?
Newton Road agent. What Jen just said is correct. But site distance is absolutely a problem there. I'm not sure where the proposed driveway is. Is it going down towards
No, it's going
St.
north.
Jean's property? Yeah, so the elevation grade there drops drastically. So if you're coming out of the driveway and you're looking right, you're probably not gonna have good sight distance. Left you might, because the grade is continuing to fall, but right you won't. So back to, Bob, what you were talking about, I think if they're gonna look at this, it's probably gonna be a shared driveway. I'm just talking driveways, and there really only can be one driveway. If there's multiple driveways on a plan, those I don't remember myself. Should have been one driveway to the right of the house. Right to the house, yeah. That was the only driveway. And for the record, I hate driveways. I got 1,614 of them in town, and they cried at me all winter because I filmed with snow.
Then you have to put in culvert. Culvert trains.
So if you allow me, I'm just gonna touch real quick on each one of what they says,
Yeah.
with all due respect. We're not here, to make anybody upset or to take any rights from no one. That's just number one. When we first bought that property, we did buy it as a farm, you're correct. But we couldn't use it as a farm. For many reasons, it's not in the right time to discuss it. However, speaking of the three driveway, there isn't such thing three driveway. The one in the back of the house, it actually was a horrible landscape situation, and all the neighbors from over 55 community down there, they came and thanked us for making it nice, and actually it looks good, because if somebody coming from Plasto, like my friend mentioned here, and want to take a ride to that community, he cannot see if there is cars because of how much bushes it was. We cleaned it in the ground, cost us almost $11,000 to do so. However, that's not a driveway. We cleaned that lot to make it as a parking space for the house, because if you have an empty land and some gravel can go there where there's 2 or 3 cars can park in an empty space, why not? But that's never been, and it will never been as a driveway. And that's the second point. Third point, when you mention you cannot see the cars coming from Plasto, according to the map we have here, and according to the engineer, that's given that the driveway will go there, because no one sure 100% that's where the driveway is going to go. That's just one of the, it might be yes or no, it might be in the other. It depends how the house is going to go when we get to that point. So if we all here decide that that's not the right place for the driveway, it might not go in the corner. And if me and you standing over there now looking at the road, absolutely, everybody will see there's a driveway and a car coming out, and the person on the car will see, because you're right, it's uphill. So you definitely have a whole view to see if there's a car coming, if there's a bike coming, and also the person's coming because he's coming straight, then going up. So that person has a whole way to see, and the person coming out of the driveway, given the driveway will be in that corner, also has the whole yard front of him to see where the car is coming out. And again, we're not trying to do something to make anybody unhappy, or we're not trying to make anybody think that we are doing something will affect neighbors. Trust me, where I came from, it's all about taking care of neighbors, respect neighbors. And when we first bought the property, I said hi to everyone. I tried to look for you, but I never seen you there. Honestly, I think I saw some. But anyway, so we just trying to make the best use of the property. There's a lot of land there. I feel why we leave it empty like that. You know what I mean? Especially we couldn't use it as a farm, and that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, and it's 2 lots, not 3 lots, by the way. It just may be missing right in here 3, but it's 2. So.
Please
at the
excuse me.
podium.
The gravel driveway that they put in 1 week after buying the property and knocking the rock wall down and putting gravel in so that they could park cars during their animals ritual that they had.
All right.
It's used
neither
today.
here nor there
rent
with
the
us,
property.
right?
Really?
The property today. They rent the property today. Cars are using that area. He called it a parking lot. It's a driveway. They pull in and out. They have multiple cars there. They basically drive their dirt bikes up and down the street till there was a complaint. And then the people that live there give my wife the double bird, okay? So they don't even live at the property, and this is what we deal with, and they want to subdivide and put a house in. That's fine. Put a house in.
Please keep in mind that this is a planning board.
I understand
It's
that.
Not for
I understand that.
litany of complaints on.
I'm not complaining. I'm explaining about the driveway, the gravel driveway that they call the parking lot. It's utilized by the renters that they have there.
Guys, we don't need the comments. All right. Does anybody have any other things that they'd like to say? So, to recap here, Jen, would you mind kind of recapping on what the planning board is essentially I mean, there's some obvious zoning concerns and other concerns, but in terms of the plan that we have in front of us, really what we're looking for is a variance based on the frontage. Guys.
So the planning board's jurisdiction, what is being asked is from an existing lot, to create 2 lots, to subdivide that original lot. The use is proposed to be residential, there's an existing house. Because of the lot configuration, a variance for frontage would be needed from the zoning board. So the planning board, if it chose to, could issue a conditional approval, but one of the conditions would need to be that that variance is not only sought, but also received.
Is what?
The one other
Hey,
item.
guys,
that
can you
we're
please
gonna
stop?
do, because you're taking jurisdiction,
So we can hear
is
what's
that
going on.
you can seek that the applicant provide proposed sightlines for where the proposed driveway configuration is, to ensure that there is at least one location where there is sufficient sightlines that would meet the requirements of the town, to at least show it on the plan. I suspect the zoning board would also want that information when considering a variance, so the planning board could have it be a condition, or you could ask that they bring it back so that you can continue for one meeting out to see if they can bring that information. Those are really the options that you have at this point, unless there are other pieces of information that the planning board feels it needs.
Okay, Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion too?
Please.
That before the applicant, no matter what we do with this, I think the applicants need to have the engineer who did these plans fix it so that it says proposed 2-lot instead of proposed 3-lot, so that they have the right information in front of the zoning board.
I agree. So I think they recognize that they had a typo there, and that's something that needs to be updated.
So I'm gonna recommend that we continue this and ask the gentleman to take care of what we were just talking about, the site variance for your driveway, just to be safe, right, for everybody concerned. The other one is, Jen talked about it earlier, test pits that need to be conducted for the sewerage on
To be
your,
clear, they've conducted the test pits.
what's that?
They've conducted the test pits, they're shown on the plan.
Okay, so those are all set? All right.
Yes.
So we need the site, and then once that's done, come back to us, then we can address that, and also take care of number 1 where it says on this, right? Yep, go ahead.
Proposed plan, actually subdivision plan doesn't contain the full, as Matt already mentioned to you, it doesn't say exactly where driveway is, it's just kind of a proposed. So when we gonna build the property, at that time, the different firm will be engaged to do the architect and layout and everything. And this firm, our engineering firm, they are only good at doing subdivision, that's their main business. Do you want us to go ahead and even start the layout or a survey and that stuff? Because there are additional survey needed for where the driveway will go. You can, alternatively, is there a way you can add that as a condition to provide the line of sight and every detail when we go to that point where we start thinking about building it? That is more viable, because at this point, it's a different kind of drawing we need to engage
Do a
them.
site plan, they don't know where it is.
Yeah.
So,
Right now, we're just looking for subdivision.
so my concern with that, and I do, typically, you can do sight lines and driveway configurations after the fact, because they will certainly need a variance, and I think that that is a very important criteria for the ZBA to consider. That's why I'm suggesting that the planning board request it now, because I believe that the ZBA should require it and likely will. That said, you could just potentially condition it that they have to go and get their driveway permit when they go to build the house, and then sightlines are put into consideration at that point. They always are for any driveway. But because of the need for the variance, that's the only reason I'm recommending you might want to seek it at this point. Mainly because of the safety concerns that the planning board does have jurisdiction over at this point.
So it's simple, just to get that, and then you can come back to our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. We'll address that, talk about that, have this line 1 corrected on your plan so it says 2, so everything's legit that way. And then we can go forward and then make the approval with the conditions that you'll just have to go to the ZBA in order to get the, for the frontage, okay? Get the waiver for that, and then you'd be all set.
Where does that driveway get addressed?
When they pull their line.
Oh,
Couldn't just approve it now.
So, I mean, it's going to require
Jim?
essentially a variance
I
for,
was just going to say, I have 3 items that I can work with the applicant on, explaining to, and there are a couple of corrections that need to be made in the verbiage that's on the plan. One is one is the addresses. One says Mass when it needs to say, one says New Hampshire where it needs to say Mass. But I have to add the septic to the plan, review it would the board like to make a decision on whether or not they'd really like a shared driveway? Because in this iteration, it'd be convenient because then,
Well, let them get the site, line of sight addressed, and then we,
yeah, I think
can
before we
talk
make
about
any
that.
actual decisions on it, that if we can get this additional information, do a continuance to the next meeting, and then look
Okay.
at what we have.
very good. In that case, would somebody like to make a motion to continue?
motion to continue to the next meeting, which will be
The 27th.
27th. So 2 weeks, same time, 7 o'clock. Get those addressed and come back and see us, and then take care of business. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Jim will have that all written up for you and get it to you.
So, and I think,
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis,
Aye.
Mr. Eddy.
aye.
That's unanimous. Stop by on Thursday.
You too, take care, thank you. Take care.
Okay. A long one tonight. So that is it for the public hearings. We're now moving on to our board business. So first up, we have the acceptance of the meeting minutes from 7/9. That was a while ago.
We have one more matter that's up for discussion that wasn't put on it, which is a request for an extension.
Sorry.
It's okay.
You might.
Do you have I don't have a paper for it. So we have the request for the extension for Puzzle Lane.
So phase 5, for 44-unit residential development.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, acting chairman, members of the board. My name is Barry Guy with Jones Beach Engineers, here for the applicant. We are here tonight requesting extension of our approvals for the Southern New Hampshire Industrial Park, Phase 2 and Phase 5. We're asking for a 1-year additional extension. Phase 2, we're working through all the permits for the state. That was the last things. We have the AOT, the wetland DOT is granted a permit for the first 105,000 square feet, which don't require any mitigation. In consultation with DOT, the intent is to occupy the first 105,000 square feet, then they'll look at it again and determine what mitigation is required. But the plans that we're gonna resubmit to the planning board for signature will have the worst case scenario for mitigation on 108, which has already been agreed upon with the state. So the final plans, already went through that, but I'll take any questions you have on phase 2. This is the 4 commercial buildings.
Yep.
So, I have a specific one if I can.
Please go ahead.
Mary, can you correct me if I'm wrong? I thought I saw a plan that was connected to the DOT driveway permit that only had 2 of the 4 buildings, which I understand you're just discussing the reduced square footage of it servicing. That also had some changes to it with the road going over the gas line and a few other drainage changes that were made to that configuration. Am I correct? Those have been what has been proposed to DOT?
The plans that you saw that went to DOT did include the 2 buildings, which I just discussed. They have.
Yep.
So the other changes I believe were approved, but there's some that might have been adjusted per AOT. So some of the drainage may have been adjusted per AOT.
So if there have been changes, and while you are certainly allowed to only build 2 of the 4 buildings, if there have been adjustments to what was approved for drainage configuration, the roads, that will likely require an amendment. I haven't gone through the whole plan, but I'm just, as a flag for you, if that is the case, there may be a need for it to come back to the planning board for amendments based on those state changes, if they are of any significant size. So that has nothing to do with whether the planning board grants the extension or not. I just wanted to bring it up.
But we would still need to grant the extension, and then they could come back with that, correct, Jen?
Yep.
And then when we submit the final ones, you can determine, the severity of the changes, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just saw it float across my desk, so I just wanted to bring it up.
Can we add it as a condition, Jen?
I would not add it as a condition. It's already part of your original approval. Just continue the original conditions.
And my other question, Jen, is he said he's looking for a year extension. Are we allowed to grant a year? I thought it was 6 months.
You are allowed to grant as long as you deem appropriate with good merit. So you are allowed to do a year.
Any other questions?
Any questions up there?
No, I'm okay.
With that being said, I will make a motion to grant the 1-year extension for the request for the site plan approval, which was dated February 27, 2024, Phase 5 for the 44-unit residential development of Puzzle Lane,
This is phase 2.
or Phase 2.
Second.
Ms. White?
I'm a little confused here for a second, okay? Just a minute. I thought he was talking about the business buildings, and now what Bob just said, he was talking about the residential buildings. Which ones are we okaying first, or are we gonna do them both together? They've got a request in for 2 different extensions, one for the residential and one for the business buildings.
I just did the one for the residential development.
Okay, because all right, I'm confused because we weren't even talking about that yet. Okay, that's fine. Then if we're doing for residential, I'm aye.
Jen, is that what you also thought? Do you have any concerns with either?
We were actually discussing the 4 industrial buildings, not the residential, but I do think that if you can do an extension on both with one motion.
Okay.
But I would start with the 4 industrial buildings if you're gonna split it. So phase 2.
Okay. Let's start with the 4 industrial buildings then. We'll make a motion for that.
Okay. Mr. Marchand, your motion was regarding the 44-unit residential?
Yep.
Okay. With Mr. Ryan seconding, would you like me to call the roll?
That's fine.
If we
It doesn't
keep
matter
them
which
as two
order we
separate
do it.
motions, they're all
Right, yeah,
cleaner.
that's fine.
Okay. Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Marchand?
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbons, Mr. Gibbons recused, and Mr. Eddy.
Aye.
Now if you'd like, for the 4-building site plan.
Yep, now the industrial.
Mr. Marchand, you said, okay?
Same thing. Motion to grant the extension for 1 year
Okay.
for the 4-building
Site plan.
site plan.
Second. Ms. White?
Jim, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The 4-building site plan, 1-year extension.
Okay. Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Marchand?
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis?
Aye.
And Mr. Eddy.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
now we will move on to board business. First is the accepting of the minutes of our July 9th meeting,
Thank you, Mike.
Good night.
Appreciate it.
June 9th meeting.
Bye-bye.
Make sure she gets, and we get those copies, all right? Thank you.
Who made the motion?
All right, so do we have a motion for the acceptance of the minutes for last meeting?
I'll make a motion to accept the meetings from the July 9th, 2024 meeting as written.
Second.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Marchand?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbons?
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis?
Aye.
Mr. Eddy.
Aye. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, so we have the NPREA Manifests in the amount of $1,532.18. Which winds up.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second, this is Barbara.
Was that you, Mr. Gibbons? Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Marchand?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbons?
Aye.
Mr. Papachristis?
Aye.
And Mr. Eddy.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Okay. Okay, there's the stuff for the, so we have our couple more items on the agenda here. We have the Aquifer Protection Ordinance Amendments discussion.
Well, that needs to get punted for 2 weeks because I have not had a chance to have my GIS staff finalize the maps to discuss it with you, so.
Considering it's
I was so looking forward to that, Jay.
later in the
I
night.
know you were.
Damn.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll
But
just,
it's coming.
we'll move that out to the next meeting,
The
or
next
next
meeting.
two meetings.
Or whatever, yeah.
And then we also have the Invest NH Housing Grants Round 2.
Yep, stick with me for 1 second. I promise this won't be too painful.
Sure.
So, sorry, my shared screen just, there we go. So I have started drafting the next grant application, which, as we had discussed back in July, is really the follow-up step to the housing work we had been working on for the past 18 months. The application is due on September 30th. The intent of this last round of grant applications is really to start doing putting into action all of the work we have been doing the past 18 months, which is regulation changes. I started writing the narrative for the grant application. I haven't gotten into the full scope of work planned, so like the timing of tasks, but the 4 main action items that I was planning to focus on, and I want a little bit of reaction to this, is to bring Newton into compliance with the New Hampshire Workforce Housing Law, and the way of doing that is consideration of an inclusionary housing ordinance. That can be either identifying parts of town or an overlay district that would be able to accommodate people that wanted to build an inclusionary housing ordinance, so a combination of market rate and workforce housing. It does not mean that anyone is necessarily going to build anything. It's just providing that opportunity to build it. That by having that on the books, you are automatically in compliance with the state law. The second item is to make a series of smaller modifications. We had some discussions about whether different changes to the accessory dwelling unit regulations might be warranted, whether discussing maybe allowing duplexes or multifamily on smaller scales in more parts of town may be up for discussion, and a few other configuration things that can be related to parking requirements, sizing of dwellings, that may actually accommodate more housing opportunity, but in a way that also protects the character of the town and natural resources. So that was sort of the second tier of potential regulations. I haven't written prescriptively exactly what we're going to do because I want to have further discussion with you about what actually seems to be the right changes, and I wanted to allow that flexibility in the grants, which that will be perfectly fine with the grantor. The third tier of items is to really make some procedural and administrative changes to a couple of the regulations, not to necessarily change the requirements and the criteria, but just to make sure that the way that we are enacting those regulations is resulting in what the town is looking for, and not putting an undue burden on, in particular, single-family homeowners that may be wanting to do things with their property, add an accessory dwelling, convert a single family into a duplex, that still gets the spirit and intent of the ordinances, but makes it a little bit easier for the staff to administer, for you guys to enforce, and for applicants to understand. The fourth tier is making small adjustments to site plan and subdivision regulations. These are typically very small changes that get made, but because they can be done any time of year, it does provide a lot of opportunity and flexibility for making those small changes over the course of the grant, which would go from December 1st, 2024, all the way to September 30th, 2026. So we have a long time frame to play with, and I want to allow the opportunity to adjust site plan and subdivision regulations as we have the time to. All 4 of these tasks are going to require public engagement. The more complicated the regulation, the more engagement that we do need to have. And some of the engagement that we had started with both the surveys and having the housing audit will need to get brought into these tasks. The basic time frame that we'd be looking at would be possibly doing very small amendments for March 2025. Things like definitions, small modifications to procedural items that aren't, I want to say, particularly controversial or have a lot of concern typically with them. But anything larger, like doing an inclusionary housing ordinance, we would have to really be focusing on March 2026 in that zoning season time frame. So really this time next year the meat of doing that kind of regulation change would have to come into play. And then again, the site plan and subdivision regulations can sort of fit in at any point. It's looking like it's going to be about a $40,000 to $50,000 grant ask to do that much work to allow enough education, because it's going to be more heavily outreach for some of those regulations, and to allow the space that if we need additional education and outreach, because sometimes that can pop up unexpectedly, we will have the flexibility to do that. So basically $40,000 to $50,000 over that 20-month time span. Up to 5% of the grant ask can be used for administrative costs, so effectively Jim's time. And we can include in there the cost for things like any publications that we need to do, or printing or posters. So that will also be worked into the grant application. And there are no direct Newton tax dollars that go to pay for the grant. It just requires planning board participation and staff participation.
Jim said he's dedicating all his time.
The one piece of this that I do need to find out, because you have already applied for this grant, you've already fulfilled a lot of the requirements. For a new grantee, it's participating in what is known as the Housing Academy. It's basically educational opportunities to learn about housing issues and how to do basically more community engagement. I participated in it in the last round. Jim also participated. If someone is interested, that would be great, but I don't think, because Newton's already had people participate, that it's required. But I will find that out, because if not, I may need one of you fine folks to consider volunteering. It's basically 4 sessions. They're about an hour to hour and a half long Zoom sessions is how they're proposing them to be. And if you can't attend one, then that's okay. It's just trying to attend most of them. But I'll find out the answer to that in the next week or so. So that's where that stands. I'll come back in 2 weeks so you guys can see the full scope and give your blessing via a letter of support, and we can get it applied for and see how we do. I think we're very likely to get the grant, but.
I don't know about anyone else. I could not read the document that you had on the screen. If you could just.
I'll send you the full scope for next
I'd like to see
time
that.
when it's completed. I just wanted to be able to share those 4 main bullets, but it's okay if you weren't able to read
And
it.
then one other thing too, what was the quick definition of inclusionary housing?
Inclusionary housing is basically building housing where a certain amount of that housing, it's typically 10 or 20%, contains either more housing units that are allowed to be built that have restrictions on it for the income that you're allowed to either purchase it for or rent it for.
Gotcha.
So it's meant to create more affordable housing.
Gotcha.
Jan, is this Housing Academy 2.0, or is this a repeat of the previous?
I believe it is just a repeat, which is why I don't think that you as a second-time applicant would need to fulfill that requirement. So Jim, I don't think it would be worth your time, quite frankly, to attend.
Yeah, no, I
went through the first one.
I was good after the first
You're not
one.
doing anything this Sunday.
But they do a really good job. So if you're interested, I'm happy to sign you up. But
What time of the day are these things at?
they've typically been in the morning.
Yeah,
Like I
that's
said,
what's
they're about an
tough.
hour and a half, and they can be done via Zoom, so it makes it a little bit more convenient. But they also have all the materials up online if you just want to breeze through them and not necessarily sign up for a specific time.
Does that meet the requirements if somebody reviews essentially reviews it after the fact, or do they have to attend the live session?
They ask you to at least try to participate live if you can.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's taking full attendance, but I'll find out the answer to that.
Okay, just curious. I mean, it makes it way easier if you can just review the material kind of at your own pace, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, they do record the Zooms, so you can view them afterwards. It's just, some of it is a little interactive, even though it's via Zoom, so you get more out of it if you're able to participate live, but I understand. I work full-time too.
Yep. Okay.
I can talk with the person from Plan New Hampshire and find out, because I know that they recorded all of the stuff from the previous session. And I'll ask her whether or not it's basically, if they're going to be using those, because the Zoom one really didn't have, I want to say it was 3 Zoom sessions and 2 live sessions, in-person sessions. The 3 Zoom ones, they really didn't have time for question and answers.
Yeah.
So if those are just being repeated, that may be something that if somebody wishes to do, you can sign up and, you know, they may have them like as a YouTube video that you can go
Yeah,
and
Right,
watch.
that's, get a link.
An easier way to
So
consume.
Jim, I have to find this out for other communities that I'm working with, so I'll ask Alyssa at Plan New Hampshire, and get back to you.
Okay.
Cool. I move to adjourn.
I also move to do that.
Second.
All right.
Thanks, Jen.